All right, welcome. It's 4 o'clock on Monday, July 8th, 2024. This is a meeting of the Port of Olympia Commission, and we are going to go directly into a special executive session. The commission is going to hold this special meeting, the special executive session today at 4 o'clock, and it's prior to our regular meeting at 5:30. And this meeting is to discuss the potential litigation with legal counsel representing the agency. And that is in accordance with RCW 42.30.1101I. The executive session is expected to last approximately 90 minutes with no action expected to be made or decisions to follow. So at this point, we will adjourn into executive session.
Point of order.
Yes, please.
Could we potentially shoot for 5:20 so we could have a 10-minute break prior to meeting starting?
I think that's fine with me.
Since you have to stay till the end.
So let's say that the meeting is expected to last 80 minutes and we'll adjourn at 5:20.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We're heading into executive session. You can stop the report.
So can the other two people just join us in session and
We've already started, you can start talking.
Oh, recording has started, okay. Well, thank you, Missy. So we are now reconvening the Monday, July 8th, 2024 Port of Olympia Commission meeting. We started out in executive session. We started at 4 p.m. To discuss a potential litigation with legal counsel representing the agency in accordance with RCW 42.30.1101I. The executive session ended at 5:20. We took a 10-minute break, and we are now back in regular session. And there were no actions or decisions made during the executive session. So now we'll move on to our regular agenda. Commissioner Tong, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Now we have an agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion concerning today's agenda? Call for the vote. All those in favor of approving today's agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we have an agenda. Okay, so now we jump to our executive director report. Executive Director Smith, you have the floor.
And yes, thank you. Apparently I've got technical issues. Okay, thank you very much, Commission Chair Ayal. So these are the events that have been happening around the port. The first was we participated and sponsored the Pride Parade in Olympia, and thanks to Commissioners Tong and Harding and Vasavada for coming out and bringing family members and some of the port staff who joined us. It was a beautiful day. We really enjoyed supporting the LGBT community as we walked along, and thanks especially to Camille St. Ange for organizing all of us and making sure we had cool, fun things to hand out to folks as we marched past. And also wanted to express our thanks to the Shoestring Circus. That was the tent that was out there on the Port Peninsula, and they were here for, I think it was a week with us. And they entertained the community. They had all 14 shows were sold out. They attended, or there were over 5,000 attendees. And for those who missed next year's show, we really hope that they will come back, and we want to continue hosting them out on port property for years to come. And they sent us a very kind email. They sent this to the commission. They have a huge, robust thank you. They had such a delightful time here in Olympia, bringing the joy and wonder of circus to thousands of people. The people of Olympia have been so sweet and supportive. They sold out every show and had about 5,000 smiling faces come through their tent over the course of their 2-week run. The folks at the port who they've worked with, they really wanted to thank Jesse, Tabor, Dylan, and Damien, and TJ before he left. And they really loved interacting with them and collaborating with them. They also really appreciated the help from the city of Olympia and their permitting office, the fire marshal, and the farmers market also worked with them as well. So they said they really want to come back, and we look forward to having them as an annual event. All right. Next up, so we have launched a couple of things on our website. The first is Community Hot Topics section. And so those are areas where we've got a lot of questions or interest from the community, and we want to make sure that we're addressing those in a way that's accessible to the public and doing it in a timely way that puts out the latest and greatest, most accurate information we have about the issue. We've also launched a monthly Port Tenant Highlight initiative that spotlights our tenants, their services, and their impact on the community. This allows the public to get more insight to the port's role and the activities that occur on port property that align with the port's mission. And more fun summer events here at the port. We've got all sorts going on this week. So first, the Thurston County Chamber is celebrating it 150 years, and so their 150th anniversary celebration. They're hosting a free community event at the Port Plaza. It's on Thursday, the 11th, I believe, starting at 4 p.m. and there's beverages and there'll be music from Queen Mother, the Queen cover band, and it should be a rocking good time. Then the Dragon Boat Festival races will take place on July 13th at the Port Plaza. And then also on July 13th, our final Summer Nights at the Port concert will take place out on the Baki Bowl out at North Point. And the band that night will be the Rolling Stones tribute band, Give Me Shelter. And they'll be rocking out at North Point all night long. The gates for that open at 5 p.m. and the concert kicks off at 6. We as always extend our appreciation to OB Credit Union for their generous sponsorship, and they sponsor the beer garden. They are helping us to ensure the concerts continue. And also huge thanks to Emily Gerton, Taberly, and our marina and maintenance staff for helping make sure those things happen and run seamlessly. And last but not least, there's all sorts of opportunities for input, and we really value your input and some of the things that you provide to us. We've made up on our community hot topics page, so please let us know. So participate in commission meetings, visit our port website, look at our social media posts. Again, we do port tours. If you'd like to come on a tour, look at our website. Direct calls and emails to us as well. You can request a meeting with our port staff, or you can always request a speaker to come and speak to your group or organization. And that is it. Thank you.
That is a lot
Yeah,
going on at the
going on.
Olympia. Any questions or comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. Excellent point. We have a new face. Up here at the podium, our prior legal counsel, Rick Hughes, as we've said times in recent meetings, is stepping back from full-time work. And so we did a search as the port, and we came up with Chris Pierce Wright, who is our new general counsel for the port, and he's an attorney at Dixon Froelich Phillips Burgess, and their firm has been involved in port issues over the years. So we're very excited to have Chris.
Welcome,
Thank
Chris.
you. Thank you, Commissioner Vasavita, for reminding me.
Any questions or comments for Alex?
I just have one comment. I feel like all these events, each one is like a little win for our community. And each of the events kind of bring a different group of people downtown. So I really appreciate the cover bands, which targets people my age and older, I think, for the most part. And the shoestring circus, which is for a lot of families. And one thing I'd love us to do is figure out, we have a lot of working musicians here who are like in their own bands playing their own music. And I wonder if there'd be any chance ever in the future, all these great staff who get these get approached, like if there's ever a chance to really feature our local bands, that would be amazing as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah.
All right, thank you. We will now move into public comment. Individual public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Members of the public may comment on agenda items and other port business. Guidelines for public comment can be found in the Commission Rules and Resolution 2022-09, Article 6. Comments should be directed to the commission as a whole and should not include comments about individual port staff or members of the public. All speakers shall be courteous in language and demeanor and shall confine remarks to those facts that are germane and relevant to the questions or issues under discussion. I don't see anyone here to make public comment. Is there anyone on Zoom? I see one hand, Lee Reiner. Ms. Reiner, you have the floor. We can't hear you if you're talking.
He's unmuted. Right, no other
Is our
hand.
volume up?
Oh, no.
Well, Ms. Reiner, I'm sorry, we're not able to hear you. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? And then we could come back to Ms. Reiner.
No hands.
We invite a board staffer to come off mute and see if we're able to hear them.
Tracy or Tad?
Tad, you want to unmute and see if we can hear you?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, Tad.
Thank you.
Excellent job, by the way.
Thanks, Tad. Ms. Reiner, you want to try again?
Can you hear me? Can you hear?
There
me?
you are. There
Oh.
you are. We can hear you now.
Thank you. Thank you for all the updates on so many issues going on at the Port of Olympia. I saw the shoestring circus and seemed very exciting. I just wanted to reiterate again, we're very excited about the Bud Inlet cleanup. So many of us are looking forward to seeing better water quality in Bud Inlet because of, as you know, it's a degraded water body right now. And so we're very excited about this Bud Inlet cleanup. I know in the past, several staff members were kind enough to assure me that we were going to have work sessions with the general public on these issues. I think it was the last Port of Olympia meeting, some of the Port of Olympia commissioners were saying that they were hoping that we could have these work sessions. I know we had a town hall over a month or so ago. The community gathered in large part to hear some of these discussions. And so I think that many of us are very eager to work with this and basically to understand and to help others understand this cleanup. Another issue, of course, that is looming is whether to build next to Swantown Marina on the Isthmus. I see all these empty buildings downtown Olympia, empty building after empty building. And I think to myself, here, the Port of Olympia commissioners are going to use public money to design another building so it can be another empty building. And then I hear some port commissioners say, oh, we're going to fill it with people, build it and they will come. And I think about about all these empty buildings in the Port of Olympia. So many of us are very concerned that we all work together as a community, the city works together with the port, and not use public money to build more empty buildings or, I don't know, I'm very concerned. So thank you for your work and carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reiner. Any other public comment?
No raised hands.
Last call. All right. We will move on to the consent calendar. Today's consent calendar consists of minutes from two meetings, June 17th and June 24th. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The consent calendar is approved. We have no pending issues to discuss this evening. So we'll move on to action calendar. First item on the action calendar is legislative services. Alex Smith, Executive Director. You have the floor again.
Excellent, thank you. No worries. Okie dokie, just pulling up the presentation.
Sorry, just a moment.
No worries. Brief dramatic pause. Thank you. So tonight is the action item for legislative services for the Port of Olympia. This is just an overview of what we're going to talk about tonight. Just do a quick recap of the advisory, describe the selected firm, and then have some questions and answers. So if you'll recall, on June 24th, we did an advisory. We indicated then that we had issued a request for proposal for some state legislative services, i.e. state lobbying, because our current state lobbyist is retiring. We received 4 responses and then interviewed 2 firms, and the selection committee recommends retaining Propolis Communications. Here's the details on Propolis. It's a local woman-owned lobbying firm, and it's owned by Kelsey Holt. She formerly worked with Strategies 360, and she has extensive experience in supporting municipalities in their legislative advocacy efforts, including assisting the city of Tumwater in getting $2 million for to purchase mitigation lands in support of their habitat conservation plan. We have very strong relationships with the 22nd district legislators who are the district board is in. She's a local resident and she feels a connection to the port, its priorities and challenges and successes. So I have a suggested motion for you and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I move to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Propolis Communications to provide legislative services to the Port of Olympia beginning July 15th, 2024 through June 30th, 2027 for an amount not to exceed $180,000.
Second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have worked with Kelsey professionally before, and I am very impressed with her and her relationships and pragmatic approach, and I think the port's lucky to have her on board.
Any other comments, questions?
I heard positive feedback after Port Lobby Day that she was there and she was helpful and communicative, so I think she'll do great.
All right. Hearing no other comments, I'll call for the vote. We have a motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Propolis Communications to provide legislative services to the Port of Olympia beginning July 15th, 2024 through June 30th, 2027 for an amount not to exceed $180,000. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion carries.
I believe we have one abstention or a non-response from Commissioner Zavada.
I haven't consulted yet with our new attorney, this is Commissioner Vasavada, but I do state level lobbying and I hope for an opportunity to partner with any of the people who had applied. So I didn't know, I have no actual conflict of interest with this contract. And I'm also very impressed by Kelsey, but didn't know if I should just abstain from voting on state legislative contracts. So I guess I will.
And, all right, we have one abstention. The next item on the action calendar is Airport Engineering Services Contract Award. Ms. Palini, Airport Senior Manager, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, Commissioners. Well, as I mentioned, I'm Chris Pelany, the Airport Senior Manager, and I'll be discussing the Airport Engineering Services contract with you this evening, or for the selection of an aviation engineering services firm, actually. This is an action item with approval requested. Per the advisory presentation to the Port Commission on June 10th, the airport is seeking a highly specialized engineering firm competent in FAA regulations and airport design standards to support FAA grant and locally funded airport projects for up to a 5-year period. The engineering firm will be utilized to support projects listed in the airport's FAA Capital Improvement Plan, known as a CIP plan, as well as airport infrastructure maintenance projects. The projects anticipated for the next 5-year period serve to update aging infrastructure and maintain port assets. The 5-year planned projects include a pilot controlled lighting system replacement, runway 1735 LED lighting and energy efficiency improvements, runway 1735 payment design and repair, runway 826 design and maintenance, and then potentially taxiway and apron reconstruction, maintenance, as well as some hangar development and environmental studies as needed. Projects for 2024 and 2025. To answer a question from the prior meeting. For 2024, we have approved in the budget a pilot controlled lighting system replacement project, which is FAA grant funded. The application for that grant will be going out in the next week or two. And then for 2025, we have several projects which will be discussed during the budget process this year with the commission for approval in the 2025 budget. And that would be the runway 1735 LED lighting improvement project with the FAA grant, a runway 1735 payment design and repair project with an FAA grant, and then runway 826 design and maintenance, which would be airport funded, and then an apron ramp reconstruction, which would be airport funded. It's important to note that the runway 1735 LED lighting and the runway 1735 payment design, the grants have not been secured, but they have been discussed with the FAA and they are programmed into their budget as well. So we discussed that with the commission this season. They're already planned with the FAA as well. The proposed budget authority, the contract will be set up as a not to exceed amount using individual task orders for each project, which will require separate approval per port policy. The requested not to exceed amount is 1.5 million for the 5-year contract period. Several of the projects will be grant funded at 90 or 95% of project costs through FAA and or WashDOT grants. I just got confirmation. I'm waiting for a written confirmation, but the FAA in their new budget has approved a 95% grant for project costs instead of the historically at normal 90% for 2025 and potentially 2026, which is a great benefit to us. Did I skip a slide there? Sorry. So results of the request for qualifications. We went out, we published it on May 6th and closed on June 7th, so just about a solid month. 34 entities did download the RFQ document, though not all were engineering firms. We received 2 submittals, Century West Engineering and Dowell. Both firms are well known and have an excellent reputation in the aviation industry in numerous states. Century West Engineering was founded in 1969. They work, their local office is out of the, the local office is out of the Bothell and Federal Way location. And they've been working with our Seattle district office for about 40 years now. So they're very familiar with the industry locally as well as nationally. Century West Engineering offers, airport planning, engineering, design, construction management, disadvantaged business enterprise program support, which is a requirement we have, environmental and grant writing services. Some current and past clients include our airport, Olympia Regional Airport, William R. Fairchild International, Sanderson Field, Auburn Municipal, and King County International Airport. The selection committee is recommending Century West Engineering as our preferred airport engineering services firm. Century West stood out in 2 key scoring areas. We had 11 scoring areas that we used for the criteria. The 2 key areas they stood out in is their key personnel making up the proposed project team have greater overall industry experience. And Century West project team has greater familiarity with the Olympia Regional Airport, providing valuable historical knowledge and familiarity with our facilities. So tonight we're asking for the approval of Century West Engineering for the action suggested motion presented to you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I will move to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Century West Engineering to provide airport engineering services to the Olympia Regional Airport for a period not to exceed 5 years, commencing upon full execution of the contract for an amount not to exceed 1.5 million. Thank you for your presentation.
Second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the topic? Commissioner Harding, anything to start? Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I will go ahead and call for the vote. The motion is to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Century West Engineering to provide airport engineering services to the Olympia Regional Airport for a period not to exceed 5 years, commencing upon full execution of the contract for an amount not to exceed 1.5 million. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Okay.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, commissioners.
Okay, moving on to action other calendar. There's nothing, nothing under the action other calendar, so we'll move on to advisory calendar. First on the advisory calendar is the Bud Inlet contract amendment for DOF. Thank you for the acronym. Sean Gilbertson, Director of Environmental Planning and Programs. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, commissioners. I'm very happy to be here. I'm John Gilbertson, Director of Environmental Planning and Programs. Tonight, I'm happy to present with Camille an advisory item about a proposed amendment to the Dalton, Olmsted, and Fugavond contract, also known as DOF. DOF is our primary professional services consultant, leading the work for the Bud Inlet remediation project. No action is requested as we present the need to amend the DOF contract. I will briefly cover the project and contract background. I'll talk about the contract history and the purpose of the proposed contract amendment. And then Camille will cover the details of the proposed integrated Port Peninsula master planning effort. Port is executing the second amendment of the Department of Ecology agreed order to investigate and plan for the cleanup of Bud Inlet sediments. Due to the complexity of the required investigation, the Bud Inlet remediation project has been conducted in phases. The DOF contract has been amended to match the requirements and timing of the agreed order as amended. Additionally, the history of this contract has been impacted by our ecology grant funding. In 2022 and 2023, the port was getting significant pressure from the Department of Ecology to spend down the grant funding to move the project forward. We have since made great progress on spending the grant funding, and with our current aggressive schedule, we will continue to do so. Currently, the investigation is focusing on planning for sampling in West Bay, which we're planning to conduct late this year. This contract amendment also defines the scope of integrated planning as originally conceived in the contract. This step is critical because plans for future operations and improvements on the Port Peninsula will inform the cleanup action plan for sediments in Bud Inlet. The original contract, which started in June of 2022, was a reset of the project. It included an in-depth assessment of project progress. It also updated the schedule and budget and defined the sequencing of the work moving forward to complete the agreed order. Amendment 1, which was signed in October 2022, further clarified the work necessary to achieve the requirements of the agreed order. This included drafting an interim action plan and evaluation of data gaps for the study area, trying to do more investigations for the contaminated areas. Amendment number 2, signed in June of 2023, was to continue progress towards completion of the new agreed order amendment. Ecology updated the agreed order, and we had more requirements and a bigger study area on which to conduct our investigation. It included planning, permitting, sediment sampling, sediment analysis in East Bay. And amendment number 2 also extended the contract to the end of this year, 2024. Amendment number 3 proposes to add $5.24 million to the not to exceed limit and extend the contract through 2026 to complete the work under the agreed order, particularly in West Bay. This amendment also proposes to further expand on the integrated planning aspect of the project. Contract funding has been done iteratively as the project progresses. This way, funding has been allocated to the contract as the budget allows. Approximately 50% of total expenditures shown are paid for by the Washington Department of Ecology and Department of Commerce through our remedial action grants and Department of Commerce appropriation. So the proposed contract amendment does 3 main things. It will extend the contract to the end of 2026 to head towards completion of the work under the ecology agreed order. The amendment also would add $4 million to the contract budget not to exceed amount to continue the Bud Inlet investigation work, including planning, permitting, and sampling and analysis in West Bay. And also, as emphasized by the commission at the April 30th, 2024 retreat for the Port Peninsula, we intend to complete an integrated master plan during this phase of the Bud Inlet remediation project. The contract amendment includes funding for this master planning effort, which Camille will discuss in more detail. And with that, I'm pleased to turn it over to Camille for more. Thank you. Any questions for me before I hand it over? Thank you. Listeners.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Sean. My name's Camille St. Ange. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Commission Affairs for the Port of Olympia. I'll be working closely with Executive Director Smith and along with the environmental team and consultants associated with the Bud Inlet remediation and proposed master plan. Tonight, I'll be sharing some background, scoping, deliverables, and schedules. I'd also like to point out that Rob Webb of DOF is online should any questions come up related to the master planning that we can't answer here in the room. So let's begin with the long-term intent of integrated planning. It's always been intended to include in DOF's original contract and the RFP that was issued, a holistic approach that addressed the environmental issues like the cleanup and remediation of course of Bud Inlet, but it also was intended to address sea level rise and Deschutes Estuary project and the evaluation of our properties, the Marine Terminal and Swanton Marina and Boatworks. There was a period of transition at the port, as many of you know, and this project was delayed roughly about a year. We're now under new leadership. We have a full 5-member commission and we have a new executive director. And under your direction at our April 30th meeting, we're moving forward in proposing master plans. I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Vasavada for asking the port to better define the purpose of the master plan and a planned action EIS, so that anybody in the public who's interested in this project will feel grounded throughout this presentation and in future meetings related to that. So I have a few slides that I'm going to share with you that are more educational in nature, and then I'll move on to more project details. So a master plan is a comprehensive long-term look at a geographical area for land use planning. And it outlines a framework for the land use, infrastructure, and economic development. This ensures a cohesive and sustainable approach to development. Master plans also, though, include community involvement. They encourage community feedback through public meetings. You can also have steering committees that align with the master plan that help create better decision-making. You get diverse perspectives from your community, increased transparency, and this should set up long-term success for the organization and the community. Oh, well, there we go. Okay. I'd now like to move on to planned action EIS. So a planned action environmental impact statement, if you're not familiar with those, this is an environmental evaluation of a plan of projects, and they ensure environmental compliance of the entire plan. It also ensures that the plan aligns with local city ordinances and that it aligns with the city's comprehensive plans that they're required to develop. The power of putting a master plan together with a planned EIS is that you will have, the EIS creates a holistic approach for the entire peninsula regarding environmental evaluation and responsible land use growth in a community. I'd next like to move on to more details about the actual master plan proposal of work, the integration and scope by DOF and subcontractors working on that team. So not to get lose sight of why we're here today, Sean, laid out that we're asking for a not to exceed amount on the contract so that it can include the master planning efforts, which would begin with an interlocal steering committee headed by Executive Director Alex Smith and public involvement meetings throughout the project. It would incorporate the marine terminal evaluation along with evaluation of Boatworks and the marina. This would also fold in an integration of the Bud Inlet remediation work and take into account sea level rise, the Deschutes Estuary project, and consider the planning that's already been done in our community through Vision 2050 and the destination waterfront planning. All this folded up and wrapped into a final upland long-term plan. The Integrated Port Peninsula Master Plan deliverables some of them are listed here, and this is a sequence slide. So calling your attention to the left-hand side of the slide, these evaluations of the marine terminal and the marina and boatworks would occur first and then inform the upland master plan. Those evaluations would include a market analysis, an economic impact analysis, master plan marine terminal layout, along with a master plan marina layout, probable construction costs, and grant funding source matrix. That information then would inform an upland master plan, which takes into consideration a number of environmental issues, like the upland placement of sediment, sea level rise, and the Deschutes Estuary Restoration Project. Market and financial analysis would be conducted and folded in from the marina and the marine terminal evaluations. It would also include an open space and parks vision casting and integration. So what that would be is how much land do we want to commit to open space and park space on the Port Peninsula. This would be branded and finalized in a master plan. Next, I want to walk you through some dates. These are draft dates, but first recognize that on this schedule, you do not see the commission updates, but there would be commission updates throughout this project. I'd work closely with Executive Director Smith to find areas and opportunities to update you at regular commission meetings. So beginning on the left, you'll see there is contract execution that needs to occur. And this entire timeline is based upon the contract being executed in July. In the middle of this timeline, you're going to see a demarcation between 2024 and 2025. I want to call this out in particular because this work in 2024 is vital to informing decisions and asks at the state legislature at the 2025 session, and then also federal asks that may occur. There are a number of open houses with the community and steering committee meetings that are identified in the green bubble and then the red arrow. In July, moving down the timeline, you'll see the initial research and review needs to take place in July in order to hit a final date of June 2025 to have a master plan in hand. Once some initial meetings occur, development options are developed. Those are then shared through the steering committee, get feedback at an open house, and that process is repeated throughout the project. There are project tours that are proposed to happen beginning in mid-August and ending in roughly the beginning of October. And those project tours I want to call out as an opportunity to go on site with the commissioners and port staff to other ports and evaluate similar projects across an entire planning area for a port. I now want to recap some of the information that I've just shared with you and fold in some of Sean's points. So the DOF contract aligns with the intended project approach that incepted in 2022. It strengthens the position of the port and the commissioners and our executive director for asking for state and federal funding for requests. It aligns the community's requests for a broader long-term planning approach. It evaluates economic impacts and market demands. And it folds in multiple environmental projects, sea level rise, Bud Inlet remediation, the Deschutes Estuary project, which is significant. And it includes community visioning that's already taken place from Vision 2050 and Destination Waterfront, but will also gain new insights from community visions throughout the workshop process. I'd like to now open it up for questions and comments and also invite my colleague Sean to join me here at the podium. Should there be any questions for you, Sean?
All right, shall we start with Commissioner Tong? Do you have any questions, comments?
No questions, but thank you both, Camille and Sean. Great information, and I do believe this plan will be very helpful. Kind of folding everything in will be efficient and help us stay focused on what the real plan is for the whole peninsula.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Oh, I just have a comment. I really appreciate all the information that was provided. I feel that the economic and I'm trying to think of the word, but looking at the scope of the marine terminal evaluations with the Swantown Marina and the Port Peninsula is extremely important. And I appreciate the fact that you folded in the environmental, because that's a part of the whole master planning to begin with, from beginning to end. You know, the importance of environmental stewardship, and EIS is always a part of the process when looking at, you know, buildings and, you know, working on the master plan and evaluating all assets and how they're included with the Bud Inlet cleanup and Deschutes Estuary, because it's extremely important to look at the forecast in the future and opportunity to you know, prioritize those specifics in looking for grant funding for the bigger picture of the Bud Inlet cleanup, which is going to cost a lot of money. So
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Also, I know we abbreviated information that Executive Director Smith has sent out previously. That's in your email if you want for deeper details, but also if there's more details you'd like us to follow up, we're more than welcome to take notes tonight and get back to you. But thank you very much for your comments.
Commissioner Wasabi?
I appreciate this update. I have some concerns. So I'm very comfortable with potentially extending the DOF contract to continue the Bud Inlet investigation, the $4 million that Sean briefed. The extending the DOF contract to do the integrated Port Peninsula master plan raises concerns for me. Camille, I think you attempt to address those concerns actually by mentioning the original scope or intention of the RFP and the contract. And it would be helpful for me to have a chance to look at those. But the concerns are as follows. When I look at DOF, Dalton, when I look at the firm, I see it as an environmental engineering firm, and I see the sorts of projects they've done, which are entirely consistent with our Bud Inlet investigation. When I look at what work a port does when they do master planning, I don't see that kind of work prominently featured on DOF's website. I do see it prominently featured on other websites like the entity that the Port of Everett has used for their master planning. So I have a question about the extent to which it's appropriate in a contract amendment to extend that body of work to DOF. And I'd like to understand more of the original RFP, but also understand, I don't see this master planning as being only about understanding the environmental parameters. That is definitely an important piece of it, but this is also the vision with community for the future of the peninsula. And so I am just not clear from this presentation that they're the competent entity to do that. And I'd like to be able to follow up. Maybe Alex, we can meet about that. And so right now, if this were a decision we were making without further information, I support doing the integrated master planning. I'm not sure I support doing it in the form of an amendment for this entity.
Commissioner Harding, any questions or comments?
I want to echo what Commissioner Sanders said about the integration and how this helps us move forward. Commissioner Sanders usually remembers all the details more than me, so I appreciate you pointing some of those things out. My question is, and we know my bias is like, let's get it done yesterday. How do we, it seems like some of this is repeating some of the work of Destination Waterfront and Vision 2050 and some of the planning work that Thomas Architecture did. Can you speak to why this is not repeating those efforts and how it's different? And then can you also speak to, for my non-government brain, these long-range planning processes, how do you keep them moving forward when you have changes in the commission body and not being the deal with another planning process?
Okay, so I'll address your,
Question.
yeah, I'll address your first question, which I think your first question is Vision 2050 and Destination Waterfront. So recognizing the need that work at community visioning and planning has already been done, the master planning efforts will fold in that work into the overall vision. So that does not have to be that community work does not have to be done again, and it's a responsible use of of public funds.
So it's like, take this and then you plug it into this bigger thing.
Yes, it'll be integrated in along with the evaluation of the marina and the marine terminal and the public space park planning. So there's so all of those work together.
So these are just different ingredients in a recipe of a master plan. It's not that we have to go redo the work that's already done.
That's correct. There's work that hasn't been done.
Right.
That that will be executed, and then the consultants will fold in the work that has already been completed.
We've asked them explicitly to build off of the work that was done in Vision 2050 and Destination Waterfront.
And those processes were not master plans as defined by these grant funding sources. So that's right. Okay. So when we undertook those processes, it was not intended to be a master plan. It was intended to be something else. Yes. I don't know. Clarita, you were here. Nobody else was here. No, I'm not throwing you on the spot. No, I just mean we maybe don't know what the intent was because it was quite a while ago that those processes were contemplated. So
Yeah, from what I'm looking at, the East Bay Destination Waterfront was a small land use planning for just a small area on the Port Peninsula.
and staff feels that expanding the planning is what's going to open us up for additional funding as well as utilizing sediments that Sean talked. So without this, we can't make all the pieces work together. We're just looking at everything in a silo.
So, and this also gives us the opportunity to look at integrated projects with the city. And we might be, if we create an integrated plan that recognizes transportation needs, there's pools of federal funding that we could qualify for. Oftentimes, a number of projects that are under consideration are shovel ready. We don't have any planning efforts to point to now. So I believe that's why the original contract, asked for evaluation of the two, the properties, the marina, the marine terminal, and the long range use of the peninsula.
That is something with the Thurston Regional Planning Commission and serving on that board that I've really come to understand is if you're not ready to go, then you don't get the money. So we're trying to be ready to go.
Yeah, yes, and to answer your question, if in regards to I think I'm not sure if I got your second question right, but I think you're asking it once a government body begins on a long range plan such as this, how do you continue to support that if as elections put new folks in seats? And there's a couple of ways to do that. I think one, we have a strategic plan that the commission supports. So identifying that in your strategic plan is a great way to memorialize the efforts. You're welcome.
Thank you.
In terms of follow-up, this is asking for a $1.2 million contract amendment to pay for planning. And I do understand through this consulting company or a consulting company, if we were to open it up for bid. My question is as follows. Could you see it onboarding the POCAC, the Port Advisory members who wanted to be consultants on environmental issues or who wanted to have input? Can we onboard them sooner instead of later, like before we go forward with a cooked contract of how we're trying to do this? Is there a way we can integrate community members right at the beginning?
I'd be more than happy to work with the POCAC straight away and integrate. I'm not quite sure. I know the question exactly. I think what you're asking is you'd like us to get some feedback from our POCAC members on this particular work that's being proposed here today. Is that right?
It is. I have concerns that we'll hear from the community a similar concern that maybe this DOF isn't. I understand the possible benefits of DOF because they're already wrapping around to understand our sediment management and different parts of our project. I would like to get a sense from our POCAC members or of how they see the role of DOF in the community doing this work. And also of TRPC, sort of they are entities. Can you talk a little bit about how you landed on the approach of seeking an amendment for DOF instead of opening this up to identify other competent entities?
Sure. And I want to also invite Executive Director Smith in and not, take the floor entirely.
I'll jump in and say, to the extent my knowledge of this, that this was in fact what was contemplated back when DOF was retained, when Director Gibney and Lisa Parks were here. They contemplated the integrated planning, and then seeking integrated planning grants was one of the things that they all contemplated. And they also were looking to do the exact same thing, do a master plan that gets to a planned action EIS. One of the things that is not clear from these materials, and probably not from the slides that I shared with the commission previously, is DOF has relationships with subcontractors with specialties in all these areas. So specifically, yeah. And so I believe that some of the contractors who did work for other ports are subcontractors to DOF on this work. And one of the benefits we saw of sort of picking this back up into what was originally contemplated in the contract is to go out and do an RFP for the same number of subcontractors and services that DOF has lined up would take months. And our goal was, because we are like behind on this, was to be done in spring of next year to allow us to the opportunity to apply for grants that big money grants that will go away after the end of 2020. And so we just thought it was in the original scope. They've already lined up an amazing group of subcontractors. I'm happy to share the list with you, their scope of work and the details of that. And just the list of things that they're going to do and be able to start now instead of 3 months from now was the primary thing for me, at least, in not going out for an RFP.
Chair, if I may.
Sure.
And it came up at the POCAC many months ago that I don't, as one commissioner, and we as a commission should determine, I don't want to undermine the efforts of our staff by having the personal opinions of POCAC or community members. I think that's we need to be respectful of our operations and the work that our staff are doing and our consultants are doing, while still getting community feedback. So I just want to be careful that we aren't tasking the POCAC with reviewing the work of our staff. That is not my intent. And I would want the commission to ensure that we were directing the POCAC while speaking with one voice on that, because I think we need to be careful of that.
To follow up on Executive Director Smith's comment, when we first started speaking with DOF, actually when Sean and I came on to the port last year, one of the first conversations they had with us was about the need for integrated planning, and we applied for an integrated planning grant. So in the technical world, they're calling it integrated planning, where we're wrapping it into, we're calling it a master plan. But that was one of the first conversations that the consultants had with us, is that there was a definite need for an integrated master planning effort. We applied for a grant. We did not receive that grant from the Department of Ecology. So then there was a fallback. How now we need to tackle it a different way. And we had a whole new body of commissioners that we've been, bringing up to speed, and knowing that there's just been a tsunami of information flying at you and asking you to make a lot of big decisions. But also to follow up to Executive Director Smith, there's 11 subcontractors associated with this master plan. And that's a broad number of people to go out and RFP to. And one of the primary goals is an eye on 2025 federal and state asks, and moving with some speed and purpose, so we can go in and be informed and show and speak to what we need to do. And it also recognizes the community effort. And I don't want to sound like I'm advocating, just calling out the pieces of this work that we've evaluated as being pretty critical to helping this commission make good decisions in 2025.
And I do think this brings up the point of personal services contracts that are at the executive director's authority, which the previous leadership used regularly. And I think that I have brought it up. I think we as a commission have expressed that we want to have more conversation at the front end, not just having these large amendments. So I think we're trying to strike a balance between keeping things rolling with all of the great work that's been done, and when contractors are being selected for future projects, maybe addressing that through a different process.
Well, I'd just like to say that I think my question was also going to be why we were integrating the integrated master plan was going to be a part of DOF's contract, because I know they're very good at what they do, but I didn't know they were master planners. But from the conversation, I can tell now that it's really a matter of scoping in their contract, and it's not necessarily DOF is going to sit down and write us a master plan, but through their relationships and their contacts, they will help facilitate that. So it makes a lot more sense to me now.
Yes, they manage it. They'll manage a team of 11 subcontractors and companies. We do have Rob Webb online too. I don't know if he'd like to speak to the master planning efforts his company made.
Good.
Could raise his hand. Yeah. You there?
Yeah, good evening, Camille. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Happy to answer any questions you may have. As Camille said, we have assembled a team here. In many ways, it's the same team that's working on the Butt Inlet project, because we anticipated this work from the very beginning. We have augmented it with two national and regional expert firms in cost estimating and cost evaluation, financial evaluations for ports and for marina property, Heartland and BST. Otherwise, the rest of the firms are ones that are on our team currently that are part of the Butt Inlet project. As mentioned, we anticipated from the beginning that this level of overall integrated master planning, integrated planning, coordinated planning would be vital to the port and the overall project, because the cost of the Butt Inlet remediation project is so high, and because it impacts the operations of the port, and because the operations of the port consequently impact how the remediation gets performed, and then the ability to manage those costs and do the remediation in a way that benefits the port and allows the sediments to be placed uplands, brings together the integrated planning of the remediation, how you remediate underneath Swantown Marina. Do you put Swantown Marina back exactly as it is, or do you make any modifications to improve the public benefits of the marina? How do the sediments that we dredge up get placed on the peninsula to provide maximum benefits to the public, future climate change, etc.? Again, we contemplated this work from the very beginning. Thomas Architecture Studios that did a number of the previous Vision 2050 and other projects on the peninsula has been on our team from the very beginning, waiting to start this work at the relevant point during the project. And so, no, to answer the question, we are at DOF not expert master planners ourselves. We are experts at planning large-scale sediment remediation projects and integrating with them all the other factors necessary to leverage the maximum benefits.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I was just curious, how is that 1.2 million calculated? Is that all allocated for this project, billable hours, or how do we come up with that? Are we gonna butt up to that not to exceed amount towards the end of this?
Yeah. There was a series of proposals from the 11 subcontractors that were put together and submitted, packaged. It's verging on 100 pages long of that outlines the scope of work and cost proposal.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Director Smith, can you share that as the original RFP?
I will send that out to you tomorrow, to all the commissioners.
All right, shall we see if there's any public comment on the topic?
Don't see any raised hands right now. Oh, I do have one raised. Lee Reiner and Carla Wolfsburg.
You could take down the slide. Yes, thank you.
Whose hand was up first?
Lee Reiner was up first.
Ms. Reiner?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Would you let Carla go first, please? Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Wolfsburg?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Sure, yes, we can hear you.
Great. Hello.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very complex issue. One thing I would hope is that that the commissioners, of course, would get this outline, this proposal, but also that you would share it with the community. I'm wondering if you could post that on your website so we'd have a chance to review the 100 pages. It's hard to really absorb all of it in this short amount of time in your meeting. So I'm wondering, would you be willing to share that for the public so we would have a chance to really have a look at it? Because I too have some concerns about the engineering firm being the overarching administrator. Even though they have subcontractors, I think it's still something that we should really be able to evaluate ourselves. And also, I think it would be very helpful if there was a little bit more time taken. The 3 months seemed like nothing to wait, in my opinion, as a public member, considering the long-term planning, and the most important part of this whole project is for the people in the future, not for us today, but 50 years from now. And I think that to be able to really see that in clear perspective, we really should have the opportunity to review all of this information rather than to have to make public record requests for everything. So I would hope you would be willing to share that with us right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsburg. Ms. Reiner?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I would like to agree with Ms. Wolfsberger as to some of these specific issues. The 100 pages has to be shared with the community. We're paying for it. Let's face it, this is a $200 million project. I think it was an excellent question that Commissioner Tong asked. She wanted some details. She asked about billable hours, and they said, oh, it's all in the report. Oh, we forgot to send it to commissioners. Well, yeah, this is important stuff, and I'm so glad people are asking the right questions. So I know that I did have a little heartburn about 10 minutes ago when we were talking about using, one of the commissioners said, let's use some of the community members, some of the POTAC, people who have been involved in science and involved in these issues with Bud Inlet and Bud Inlet cleanup for decades, use those scientists to get some ideas from the POTAC committee going forward on this. And then one of the commissioners said, oh, we don't want to undermine staff. Well, excuse me, I think a lot of the staff is fairly new. So I think we're all getting ourselves up to speed. These are very, very complicated issues. I think that if we have people in the community who have the education and knowledge and expertise to give public comment, especially through the POTAC Environmental Committee, that we should use their expertise. So I'm very happy that our executive director is looking to have these community meetings so we can all fill the room and ask our questions, because we want a water body that's not degraded, and we want a place where people can actually get in the water and enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Reiner. Any other public comment on this topic?
I don't see any additional raised hands.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next topic, which is Port Management Agreement application to Washington Department of Natural Resources. Clarita Maddox, Real Estate Senior Manager, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Commissioners. Good evening. Clarita Maddox, Real Estate Senior Manager. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you tonight again. And as always, I'm very grateful for being in front of you to express what is so dear to me, which is operations of the port. This evening, I'm going to talk about the Port Management Agreement and the application to the Washington Department of Natural Resources. This is an advisory only, and no action is required. The Port Management Agreement that we have in place expires September 30th of this year, and the application to the Washington Department of Natural Resources is required. I want to give you a little bit of background, as this is probably the first time for some of you to deal with this. By law, DNR is directed to manage the aquatic lands owned by the state. RCW 79-105-420 provides the ability for DNR and port districts to enter into an agreement for ports to manage such lands and conduct port operations such as marine terminals. That's how they get to have marine terminals and their extensive operations. Washington Administrative Code 332-30-114 states the requirements that govern the port management of state-owned aquatic lands. The agreement is intended to identify the respective responsibilities for managing aquatic lands that abut to upland properties owned by the ports. In this case, operations for the Port of Olympia Marine Terminal. The 1984 PMA, or Port Management Agreement with the Port of Olympia, expired on September 30th, 2014. Amendment number 1 provided an additional 10 years, which expires now in September of this year. The Washington Public Ports Association developed a handbook to assist ports districts through the PMA application process. The handbook was intended to assist public officials understand and implement port management agreements. The handbook was published under close collaboration between the WPPA and the Department of Natural Resources. I want to speak specifically to our current agreement. In 1996, DNR disputed the ownership of the western part of the vacated Columbus Street, submerged Thailand's harbor and channel when the city of Olympia vacated it in 1924. The disputed area is now occupied by Anthony's and the Marketplace office building here in the Market District. But it was put together and it got developed under DNR's approval for that development in 1998. Port and DNR actually settled the dispute by a settlement agreement dated on April 1st, 2016, which included DNR's receiving 35% of the annual revenues from those two businesses, Anthony's and Marketplace. And they have received to date from 2016 to 2023, $328,576 $328,000, 576 to date. Amendment number 2 was then signed in April of 2016, identified the tile lands owned by the port, called now the parcel 2, and the port signed a quick claim deed of the disputed area to DNR. It also included in the settlement identified leases affecting the vacated Columbia Street, where Anthony's and the Marketplace are now located, and included the port's commitment to update the PMA record of survey to include the areas of the subject of the settlement, which again is where Anthony's and that western part of Columbia Street, vacated Columbia Street, now also referred to as PMA Parcel 2. The application requires that the port updates the survey, the record of survey, which I gave you a little example here, and anything in the blue highlighted section is the DNR boundary lines. The application requires a description of the uses within that boundary line, requires copies of all the leases related in that area, and use agreements with the PMA, any planned projects in the future, a copy of most current comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements as well. The PMA application requires commission action, and by way of a resolution, we'll be providing delegation of authority to the executive director to apply and sign the PMA. The next steps, the Port Commission will approve, we'll present this to you for your consideration, a resolution authorizing the executive director to apply for the new port management agreement and signing it on behalf of the port. Typically, the PMAs have a term of about 30 years. DNR, having worked with them since January of this year to get to this point, DNR has expressed to me that they're in the development of a new template to update the template that they've used for decades and decades. And there's RCWs that have changed, standards that have changed. So they're in the process of creating a new template. And if not ready by September 30th, it's more likely that there will be an extension. So I wanted to bring that up in case it goes either way. Staff will present a resolution to you for consideration for approval at its public meeting of July 22nd of this year. If you have any comments or questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Comments, questions? No? All right, let's see if there's any public comment on this topic.
Hands on Zoom.
No raised hands, no comments, no questions. You must have done a great job.
Like it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The third item on our advisory calendar, third and final item is the.
Raised hand. Sorry, raised hand.
Okay.
All right.
Wolfsburg, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just really curious about that. The reference to the Washington Public Ports Association handbook. Is that the guiding document? I'd like to know that's being used in this contract to assist the port in making its decisions. Is that the only source of information? And is that something that the public can also see? That's my question. I guess it's more of a question than a comment. So I'm just wondering if that could be addressed, if Clarita might mention that to us. Thank you.
If I can, it's just a guidance document that helps ports understand what port management agreements are and how to go about applying for updates to them, I guess reapply for them. It's not a legal document, and it is publicly available on the Washington Public Ports Association website. So I think they've got a little tab for resources on their website, and you can go and take a look at the manual.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement. Warren Hendrickson, Director of Operations, Public. You have the floor. Sorry.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. My topic tonight is the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. My name is Warren Hendrickson. I'm the Director of Operations for the Port. Pleasure to be here this evening. Today's presentation is advisory only. There is no action required by the Commission tonight. This is the first time we have brought this topic before this set of commissioners. And so as a result, I'm going to try to meet mutual objectives. One, to bring you up to date with regard to the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, the scheme, or CSHI, as I will refer to it alternatively through tonight's presentation, and also for the benefit of our listening audience and also the wider community. This is an essential document for the operations and conduct of business by the Port of Olympia. And so for someone moving to Thurston County for the first time, my goal is to have this particular video as a building block approach and to explain for newcomers moving to our community exactly what this document is and its importance in the big scheme of things. No pun intended on the choice of words. As a result, I will provide you some background and talk about the need for a 2024 amendment based upon past actions and recent actions by the Commission. The source documents are the Revised Code of Washington, various state laws, the Port website, the link is shown there. And as a matter of fact, in the last comment of the previous presentation, there was direct reference made to the WPPA Port Governance and Management Guide. This is the link available right there, which is a live link available in the packet. So anyone that's listening right now would be able to click on that link and be able to get direct access to this document. It was put together by a former executive director with decades of service in the port industry and has also been a consultant directly to the Port of Olympia in the past. So it's a highly effective reference. It is not regulatory in any way, but it is a helpful guidebook. What is a comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements? In short, it is a port plan required by RCW. It portrays the port's geographical boundaries and then identifies the specific property and facility improvements contemplated for those geographical areas that require the expenditure of public funds. So you have multiple elements there. You have a map, you have facilities and improvements, and the expenditure of public funds. Those have to be identified in the scheme or comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. In fact, this document is one of three keystone documents that any port must operate under. The first is the strategic plan. Our current strategic plan has 6 initiatives and multiple goals. It is Strategic Plan 2025, also available on the website, and includes both the mission statement and the vision statement of the port. The scheme is the second of those keystone documents, and the third is the annual budget. All three of these are approved by you, the Port Commission. Looking at it a little bit differently, the strategic plan says, who are we? What do we do? The scheme is, what do we own and what do we intend to do with it? And the third, the budget, how do we intend to pay for it? Again, all commission decisions and create the building blocks or the foundation by which we move forward as a port organization. It was created in 1911 by the Port District Act, and to ensure transparency, the legislature created the legal requirement to seek community input on capital plans and fund expenditures by ports through a formal public hearing. This was the first fundamental concept and use of the public trust doctrine between ports and the communities in which we serve. Even more significantly, this particular requirement preceded the Open Public Meeting Laws Act by 6 decades. Open public meetings did not occur and was not voted in by the legislature until 1971. This public hearing requirement preceded that by 60 years. So we've been at this for quite some time. The terminology is fairly unique. Ports are known as special purpose districts. And as a result, it not only has unique authorities, but also comes along with that is unique language and terminology. The authorities for ports have significantly expanded over the decades. It now includes the ability to develop real estate, to get involved in economic development purposes, and to own airports, none of which was involved in 1911. The terminology, however, and referring to it as a scheme of harbor improvements in spite of the increase in authorities remains unchanged, primarily due to tradition, but also because it was embodied in state law. So you might have the question about why do we call it a scheme of harbor improvements when it includes so much? Those are the reasons. What is a scheme? At the time that this bill was passed, the legislative intent was that it's a plan or program of action. Of course, the word scheme has now changed in vernacular and common use over the decades, but in terms of legislative intent, this was ultimately its purpose. To also explain then the port's intentions and to provide a high-level plan to construct physical improvements with public money. And it is essentially the functional equivalent of a city or county comprehensive plan. The direct law that creates it, it shall be the duty of Port Commission of any port district before creating any improvements hereunder to adopt a comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement in the port district after a public hearing thereon. It's all from RCW 5320. This is the opening paragraph. The balance of RCW 5320, which includes 6 separate sections, addresses other related statutory requirements. Everything you need to know about the scheme is in RCW 5320 from a regulatory aspect. And ultimately, the bottom line is to require ports to share with the public in advance of expenditures its plans to invest in any type of physical improvement. The adoption amendment, therefore, requires a public hearing. The public hearing does have very specific advance notice requirements that do apply. And this also ensures that there's an allowance for public comments, not only as part of this agenda meeting tonight, but also as part of the public hearing for any future amendments or changes to the scheme. The contents of the scheme are shown here. The first is a map that helps define the geographical boundaries. The second one is a general statement of objectives. It may be repetitive from the strategic plan and the mission and vision statement. Doesn't necessarily have to include it, but the purpose of the scheme and what its role in the role of the port. It's a description of inventory of both existing and planned facilities, a description of the planned improvements to those facilities, and lastly, the capital improvement plan and schedule, which is the budget that supports those improvements. Why is it important? Because without a current comprehensive scheme, the port would not be eligible to apply for many grants. One in particular is that of the RCO, the Recreation and Conservation Office. To apply for those grants, you must have a comprehensive scheme. Let's look at our own Port of Olympia comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement. It currently includes an introduction section, a description of the Bud Inlet properties, all of which that you can see listed on the slide: North Point, Swantown, East Bay, Market District, West Bay, Marine Terminal, essentially our Olympia properties downtown. Then we have our Tumwater properties. The airport and New Market Industrial Campus properties form the next section of the document. It includes Olympia Regional Airport, the New Market Industrial Campus, and Clean Water Center. And lastly, the current document does include the Lacey properties. Why are revisions required to this current document? Well, in the past year, the port has, through the commission, has undertaken 2 property sales. We have sold the 608 Washington property to Lot this past year in the Market District. We also recently sold the Commerce Business Center in Lacey. So as a result, those properties are no longer in the inventory, and we must therefore update the map in our facilities list. In the future, likely before the end of the year, we will bring before the commission the intent to add the airport master plan update, currently in its final stages, for acceptance as an addition to the comprehensive scheme. And then earlier tonight, you heard a presentation on the integrated Port Peninsula master plan. When that process is complete, that will also be brought back before you for consideration to implement and add it to the comprehensive scheme. There are some staff recommendations that we offer to you for consideration of incorporation. Ultimately, there is no magic template or single way to do a comprehensive scheme. There are options, but it also gives the port the opportunity to highlight some of its important focuses as part of the strategic plan and its initiatives. Included among those are our environmental initiatives in particular. The Bud Inlet remediation, sea level rise, habitat conservation plan completion, energy sustainability goals. Also, the 5-year capital investment plan, which would be another step beyond just the annual budget and current capital budget, but that would also include the annual capital budget and perhaps a SEPA checklist. The State Environmental Protection Agency.
Yeah, can you
Yes, Commissioner.
tell us more about what a SEPA checklist is?
A SEPA checklist is something that's attached to a planning document. I'll give you a specific example. When we complete the airport master plan update, we will complete that. It is a planning document. The FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, is the sponsor of that airport master plan update. On a federal level, it does not require any environmental work be done for the master plan update itself, only when individual projects are actually budgeted and slated for completion, and before they commence, an environmental project will begin. Earlier tonight, Airport Senior Manager Chris Paolini talked to you about the runway 1735 rehabilitation that's planned for 2025, budget and grant approval permitting. That environmental process will be required by the feds before that project initiates. But that's the federal NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act requirements that apply. SEPA is the State Environmental Protection Act. And to be most conservative, we take a look at planning documents generally require a SEPA checklist, which then identifies the high-level environmental concerns or questions that will need to be answered further down the road. So when we complete our airport master plan update, the next step immediately after it comes to you before the commission is port staff will engage a company, submit proposals through our new airport engineering services firm to commence a SEPA checklist, which will help identify those concerns. Some suggested best management practice that we also offer is an annual formal amendment of the comprehensive scheme. There's nothing in state law that requires it. However, it would be appropriate because that way you always have an up-to-date scheme. So for grant application eligibility, you always have one that's up to date and ready to go. And changes occur year to year with our budget and our long-term plan. Just watch what will happen over the next couple of years between the Bud Inlet cleanup, the estuary, the Port Peninsula Master Plan. Lots of changes could occur. So the idea of having an annual update would be helpful and would also be transparent to the public as a foundation keystone document. Incorporating such an annual amendment can also be done at the time of the adoption of the annual budget and tax levy. The advantage to that is we're doing it at the end of the year. We already have to have a public hearing to approve the budget and to approve the tax levy. So by adding one more element into that public hearing, when you've already got the notice requirements, the public comment period, you can simply then update the comprehensive scheme. Again, a commission choice, but it's an option that's available to us. It doesn't have to be done with the budget or the tax levy, but it does provide, since the mechanism and the logistics are already established, it would be an easy way to get it done and to implement it. Additional components as appendices could be the capital investment plan along with the capital budget. And that way it's not actually incorporated into the CSI itself. It would just be a simple appendix and a related, and then you could basically staple these other documents to the rear and provide them as additional resources on the port's website. So going forward, our next steps include what are the desired comprehensive scheme harbor improvements that I just listed on that last slide. Also, what would be your desires for amendment frequency and timing and how that would be done. And step one will be at the next commission meeting on July 22nd, we will provide you a content revision in text of both Word and PDF based upon your comments and direction tonight. And we will have a public hearing that will allow consideration of that new revised document. And then step two, once we have that commission approved document, we will actually complete then a more formal scheme document, very similar to our, multi-page glossy examples of our strategic plan 2025 and our vision 2050. Something that would, have the pictures and include the map and all the information into it. So initially it'll be a first approval. Let's approve the text. And then the second piece we would produce a glossy document for distribution. And with that, I'll entertain any questions or comments and take any commission guidance you would like to offer.
Who would like to start? Mr. Sullivan? No? Mr. Tomlin, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions. I do appreciate all the information. As far as direction goes, I think it is really important that we get this updated every year. I don't see why we wouldn't do it with the budget, since they're so intertwined. Yearly would be appreciated.
Okay.
Mr. Sanders, anything?
I agree with that. And also, I think that it's really wonderful that the staff recommended the incorporation of environmental initiatives. So I really would like to applaud you on that. And the SEPA checklist as well. And to echo what Commissioner Tong stated, that I think an annual amendment and adoption, you know, for especially for grant funding, would be great, in align with the budget and the public hearing timeframe.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Harding?
I agree.
Just I agree. Thank you. Logistical question. Is this being briefed because then in the July 22nd meeting, we'll have in that packet the comprehensive scheme update? I see.
That is correct, Commissioner. We will have a draft, the text version, Word and PDF, available for your review. It's a fairly simple document, quite honestly, based upon what we have now. So we'll add to it, improve it, add the tone and direction that you gave us tonight. And then it would be included for your consideration at the next meeting, subsequent to a public hearing on the document.
All right, thank you. I was just gonna say that, I appreciate all the work and the suggestions you're putting into here. I would have been perfectly happy to have just a document that meets all the requirements, but you guys seem to be going above and beyond, so I appreciate the work you're putting in. Shall we see if there's any public comment on this topic?
And Carla Wolfsburg.
All right, Ms. Wolfsburg?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm glad to hear that it's required that there's a public meeting for the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. But I would also like to ask that not all of those other master plans be included. I think that the capital investment plan and the annual capital budget and the airport master plan, which is significant and huge in its own right, and the integrated Port Peninsula master plan are all significant topics that would be very helpful for the public and I think the commission to hear from the public on each one of those rather than to have it all rolled into one meeting, which I think would be really difficult for all of us to absorb and be able to give comment at one meeting. It would be a long meeting and it would be very, I think, helpful to have to the commission, to the community, to have it broken up into several meetings. Because we have heard from the executive director that town halls are something that are planned. And I think this would be a really good opportunity to make a town hall for each one of these topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsburg. Any other public comment?
Reiner had her hand raised.
Ms. Reiner?
Yes, thank you. I would like to again support the past speaker as to the complexity of these issues that have been addressed tonight. These master plans, the airport master plan, the marine master plan, all of this is very, very complicated stuff. And if we're trying to roll it all into one ball and shoot it across the court, I think a lot of it is going to get splattered and missed. I believe that we have enough expertise in our community that different people with their education can look at these different issues and closely scrutinize the issues one by one, instead of, as was said, rolling them all into one big initiative. So I I again have heartburn that, you know, let's get it done. It's over now. Let's go on to the next thing. No, no, that's not the way we do it here in Olympia. We think things through. We look for 7 generations. We see the expertise that different groups have on these different issues. And we think about 7 generations. We think about the future. How are all these things going to come together? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsburg. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Reiner. Any other public comment on this topic?
Gino raised more hands.
All right, if that's it, then we will move on to, thank you. Thank you, Warren.
Thank you, commissioners. Greatly appreciated.
Great, great presentation. So let's move on to commissioner reports. Commissioner Hartney, would you like to start with commissioner reports?
Sure. My quote of the day is from George MacDonald. To be trusted is a greater compliment than to be loved.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Vasavan.
Yeah, just grateful to be part of the Port of Olympia at this beautiful moment in our summer. We're a race to the top here in the Port of Olympia. I like that.
Commissioner Sanders.
I just echo everyone else.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Commissioner Tom.
I just wanted to clarify my question real quick on the contract amendment for DOF. That is in our packet, which is available online. As Commissioner Sanders pointed out, I missed that page in our nearly 300-page packet this week, but it is in there for anyone who wants to see it, and that whole packet is available on the port website. And then, yeah, wanted to also echo what Commissioner Vasavan said. I'm just really grateful to be here, and I really felt that last weekend at our Port Pride event. I was really just proud to be marching with the port, and Camille, you did an amazing job organizing. We really appreciated that.
All right, great,
Sorry I
thank you.
missed it.
Thank you all for your comments. Moving on, is there any other port business this evening?
Not today.
All right, giving it plenty of time for anybody who might have other business. Moving on to meeting announcements. Executive Director Smith.
All right, our upcoming meetings, on Monday, July 15th at 3:30 p.m. in this very room, we will have a commission work session. I believe the topic is agenda setting, and we will have an opportunity for the commission to prioritize the many topics that they have indicated that they'd like to discuss in our various forums this year. On Tuesday, July 16th, there's a Citizens Advisory Committee that is at 6 p.m. also in this room at 626 Columbia Street in Olympia. On Monday, July 22nd, we have a regular business commission meeting, but there is a time change. Note there in red. It will be held at 10 o'clock in the morning because our commission are traveling to Richland, Washington for a WPPA Commissioner Seminar. And so they need time to take off and get there before it gets too late. And then on Monday, August 12th, we will have another regular business meeting for the commission at 5:30 p.m. here in the Olympics room at 626 Columbia Street in Olympia. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments on the meeting agenda? Meeting announcements? Nothing? All right, hearing nothing else for the good of the order, I call this meeting adjourned.